Hello again, everyone. You are the Hardy. You're here to the very end. I want to say one last thank you. You can tell I'm a grateful person. And someone once said, it takes a village. But I think when it comes to the Our Ocean Conference in 2022, it's taken an island, the island of Palau. And I want to say thank you on behalf of everyone associated with the conference to all the security people, the healthcare workers, everyone who made it possible for us to be healthy and safe in this room. So thank you to all of them. The decisions we make and the actions we take these next several months will determine the health of the ocean for centuries, for our children and grandchildren. As we gather in Palau, negotiations continue on a number of important agreements and conventions, one on biodiversity, another on the high seas, one on deep seabed mining, on fisheries subsidies, on plastic pollution, and so much more. Let me invite now to the stage Heidi Fox, the acting representative for the United Nations Office of the Least Developed Countries, Landlocked Developing Countries, and Small Island Developing States, to lead a conversation about this super year for the ocean, leadership and action. Please welcome Ms. Heidi Fox.
Ali, a very good afternoon to all of you. Such a pleasure to be here and moderate this final panel of the Oceans Conference before the closing ceremonies. My name is Heidi Kuderus Fox, and I'm the acting representative, High Representative for the least developed countries, landlocked developing countries, and small island developing states at the UN headquarters in New York. We are a very small office looking after supporting the 91 most vulnerable countries in the world. Very importantly, the small island developing states. There are 38 of those. And I thank the government of Palau for all of this, organizing this conference, this wonderful conference, and welcome you to this session towards a super year for the ocean, leadership and action. I'm really honored to be your moderator today. And now it's my great pleasure to invite our distinguished panelists to the stage. First, I would like to invite Honorable Opito Williams-Sio, Ambassador Michel Bocoz, Ambassador Conrad Hunt, Director General Charlina Vicheva, and Dr. Stuart Minchin. Very warm welcome to all of our panelists. And I bring you a warm welcome from the headquarters in New York, but I also bring you a warm welcome from my home country, Finland. Finland is a country, when you sit here in Palau, that is very far away, up in the northern peripheries of Europe. And you might not even know that 1/3 of our country is on the other side of the Arctic Circle, on the northern side. But what you also might not know is that Finland is an island country. We have more than 70,000 tiny little islands in the archipelago of Finland. And growing up, I used to sail to these beautiful islands, and in the wintertime, believe it or not, the sea would freeze, and I would go skiing with my parents, exploring these wonderful, beautiful islands, skiing from one island to another. Unfortunately, this is no longer possible. Climate change has changed. The warming waters are making it difficult. The sea doesn't freeze, or it's dangerous to go on it. So what I want to say here, and as I have been asked to set the scene for our panel today, I want to talk about the interconnectedness of despite where we are in the north, in the south, across the planet, we cannot survive without solidarity across the globe. So the backdrop of our meeting is this most beautiful, lush, tranquil island, which is a stark contrast to the scene that has been set by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is the most shocking and dire warning for the future of our shared island. When you are on an island like we are today, here today in Palau, it can be easy to see how dependent we are on nature and on each other. You can see in a visceral way the interconnectedness and reliance that we have on ocean. Globally, we are interconnected people, and with every passing day, we are more and more connected economically and socially. Planet Earth is our island, nature, biodiversity, and ocean our great interconnector. As species, we have been reliant and connected on the ocean since the dawn of human civilization. The ocean is our shared heritage. It is entrusted to us. In our modern world, it is not just the small island developing states and ocean states that benefit from the ocean. Even people in the most remote, landlocked places on the Himalayas rely on the ocean for the oxygen we breathe, rain from the sky, and climate that they live in. In this way, the ocean itself, as was so eloquently presented in the opening session yesterday, the first panel by Dr. Pawan Patil in the opening panel when he was asking us to breathe in, breathe out. In the United Nations Secretary General's State of Planet address, he noted that humanity is waging a war on nature. Not only do we need to make peace with nature, we need to arrange a bailout for nature. And this brings me to my second scene-setting point, action. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report shows us that the window for action is vanishing rapidly. We need action to end our assault on nature and to heal the ocean. We began our year of ocean action in One Ocean Summit in Brest, France, with high ambition. In Nairobi, just a few weeks ago, we achieved our first victory when the United Nations Environment Assembly committed to introducing a legally binding treaty to tackle plastic pollution, which will be of tremendous benefit for the ocean health. This is leadership by international community. But we cannot stop there. We need to see similar leadership on the conservation and sustainable use of marine biodiversity of areas beyond national jurisdiction, the so-called BBNG. At the Biodiversity COP in Kunming, China, later this year, at the Ministerial Conference of the World Trade Organization, which will consider fisheries subsidies, and at the COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh. Along with the UN Ocean Conference in June in Lisbon, these meetings offer the opportunity for the international community to show further leadership and effect real change and action. These meetings will also bring us together to demonstrate our partnership with the small island developing states. An important partner in these endeavors is, of course, the private sector, and my office is proud to have organized with the government of Palau the SIDS Global Business Network Forum that took place here the day before yesterday, and the outcomes of that meeting will be a springboard for action at the UN Ocean Conference in Lisbon, where we will address important themes such as development of sustainable blue economy. So all of these meetings will promote the achievement of SDG 14, life below water, and raise awareness of the special case for the SIDS. So now, ladies and gentlemen, given that Special Envoy John Kerry called us yesterday, and I quote him, certified hard asses, let us now see what we are all going to do for the super year for the ocean. And that brings me to our very distinguished set of panelists, who are undoubtedly the people who will contribute greatly to this important work. First, in the panel, we have Honorable Aupito Williams-Seal, Minister for Pacific Peoples and Minister for Courts of Aotearoa, New Zealand. Welcome.
Thank you.
I'm glad to welcome Her Excellency Michel Bocoz, Ambassador of the French Republic to the Philippines and non-resident ambassador to Palau, the Federal States of Micronesia and Marshall Islands. Warm welcome to you. I would like to welcome my friend from New York, Ambassador Conrad Hunt, Deputy Permanent Representative of Antigua and Barbuda to the United Nations, and the lead climate negotiator for Alliance of Small Island States, AOSIS. As you know, Antigua and Barbuda plays a very important role as the chair of the Alliance of Small Island States. Next, I would like to welcome Her Excellency Charlina Viceva, Director General for Maritime Affairs and Fisheries of the European Commission. Warm welcome. And finally, a very warm welcome to Dr. Stuart Minchin, Director General of the Pacific Community. So before we start the panel discussion, we have two pre-recorded messages, and we will start by welcoming the pre-recorded messages by His Excellency Taneti Mamau, President of Kiribati.
Our co-hosts, fellow leaders, excellencies, distinguished delegates, in the name of the Almighty God, I begin by sharing peace and blessings to you all. Our theme for this important conference aligns perfectly with my government's Kiribati Vision for 20 Years Plan, KV20, which focuses on innovative and sustainable transformation of our ocean resources to create a wealthier, healthier, and more prosperous nation for the people of Kiribati. At the same time, we recognize that the conservation landscape across the Pacific and our seas region is evolving, and we need to adapt our vision so we do not repeat the dramatic histories of the past. As SIDS, we share common history and lineage to ancestors who are well known as great custodians of the ocean. And while this legacy needs to be celebrated and incorporated into our conservation efforts, we must also recognize that we also share another common history that is not so laudable, a colonial history that oppresses our traditional knowledge and cultural practices to manage our resources, and does not take into account our needs, our priorities, and our national context. A system of administration that remains steeped with legacies of environmental destruction that our people have now inherited. And we must work together to ensure that such legacies of environmental destruction are reconciled through urgent and innovative rehabilitation measures. As responsible resource owners and users, we are part of the problem and equally need to be a part of the solution. Congruent with Blue Economy principles, Kiribati has made an informed and collective decision to sustainably develop our marine resources within our Phoenix and Line Islands. Whilst this would mean foregoing the no-take zone within PIPA, on the other hand, it would see our government apply innovative programs within the remit of marine spatial planning to sustainably develop our resources to benefit all Kiribati. The Kiribati Vision for 20 years is people-centric, and efforts to protect biodiversity needs to strike a balance between conservation and prosperity. This is our role as government, and our actions within our sovereign territory, from the depth of our ocean to the realm of our upper airspace, need to be focused on uplifting the livelihoods of our people. Excellencies, colleagues, and friends, Kiribati joins urgent calls on global financing institutions to increase investment on oceans and climate change, which remains a core priority for all SIDS. It is also important to reaffirm our commitments to protect our oceans from nuclear contaminants and to continue to raise concerns regarding submersible vessels that traverse our waters and may pose unforeseeable significant risk to the health of our ocean. As the wise saying goes, prevention is better than cure. Kampesinda. Our co-host.
I thank President Mamau for his very important message, and now it's my pleasure to invite the pre-recorded remarks from His Excellency Fumio Kishido, Prime Minister of Japan.
第7回アワーオーシャン会議の主催者でおられるウィップス・パラオ大統領、ケリー米国大統領特使、ご列席の皆様、日本国総理大臣の岸田文雄です。新型コロナの影響を乗り越え、我が国の特別な友人であるパラオでこの会議が開催されることを嬉しく思います。本題に入る前に、ロシアによるウクライナ侵略について申し上げます。我が国としてロシア軍の残虐な行為により、ウクライナにおいて多くの市民が犠牲になっていることを極めて深刻に受け止めており、強い衝撃を受けています。この侵略は重大な国際法違反であり、断じて認められません。これは欧州にとどまらず、アジアを含む国際社会の秩序の根幹を揺るがす極めて深刻な事態であり、最も強い言葉で非難します。本題に戻ります。私たちは広く自由な海の豊かさと繁栄を享受してきました。この海を将来にわたってすべての人に分け隔てなく平和と繁栄をもたらす公共財としていくことが不可欠です。この会議に出席した国々が連帯することで、それは実現可能であると私は確信しています。豊かな海洋を今後も維持していく上で、気候変動対策は待ったなしの課題です。我が国は2050年までのカーボンニュートラルを実現するとともに、我が国の経験を生かし、将来、洋上風力発電をアジアに展開していくことを通じ、世界の気候変動対策をリードしていきます。海洋環境については、我が国は2050年までに海洋プラスチックごみによる追加的な汚染をゼロまで削減するとの大阪ブルーオーシャンビジョンを主導しました。国際社会全体で実効的な海洋プラスチック汚染対策に取り組めるよう、2025年までの途上国廃棄物管理人材の1万人の育成を進め、条約作り等でも引き続きリーダーシップを発揮していきます。法の支配に基づく自由で開かれ、持続可能な海洋は、地域の平和と安定のため重要です。我が国は3年に一度、太平洋島サミットを開催し、海洋分野の協力を推進しています。昨年のサミットでも、ウィップス大統領をはじめ、太平洋島諸国の首脳と充実した議論を行いました。今後も我が国は、自由で開かれたインド太平洋の実現に向け、パラオをはじめとする太平洋島サミットのパートナーや民間部門との協力実績を生かし、ブルーエコノミー実現に向けた取り組みを推進します。ご清聴ありがとうございました。
I thank the Prime Minister of Japan for his very important message. And ladies and gentlemen, this will be a moderated panel discussion. So I would like to start with you, Honourable Minister. As we are talking about a super year for the ocean, what does this mean for New Zealand, and what are New Zealand's priorities for action? And then also, how does the SDG 14, Life Below Water, help focus global development efforts on achieving a healthy ocean for all?
Ali, and I want to thank you, Heidi, and just acknowledge the First Lady of Palau, who has been present throughout our proceedings, my ministerial colleagues, and all visitors to this part of the world. I'd say 2022 does have the potential to be the super year for the ocean, but our message is it can, but it requires a collective effort by all of us, governments at all levels, civil society, industry, and other stakeholders. We also need to act in partnership with Indigenous peoples and recognise that they have relevant traditional knowledge that's important in finding solutions for the challenges that that lie before us. And then we also need to think intergenerationally, because climate change and the health of the ocean is an intergenerational justice issue. Our guiding principle in Aotearoa, New Zealand, is based on Indigenous word kaitiakitanga, which means we are custodians, stewardships, and so we have a responsibility for the conservation and sustainable use of the ocean. New Zealand is a maritime state in the Pacific, and where our ocean defines our culture, our well-being, our economies, and our connection to our extended family throughout the Pacific. At the national level, we have established a dedicated oceans and fisheries portfolio to ensure that we have an all-of-government coordination and coherence in our approach to oceans issues across the many parts of our internal governance. This year, more so than ever, we want to prioritise the development of strong international legal frameworks that keep pace with global developments and address the challenges faced by the marine environment. We want to see the conclusion this year of an ambitious and effective agreement on marine biodiversity in areas beyond national jurisdiction. 2022 will also mark the adoption of new global biodiversity targets and goals under the Convention on Biological Diversity. This framework must give adequate recognition to marine issues. Another key area for us, and that's the one taking place at the International Seabed Authority on mining of the deep seabed mining. It's clear that this is an issue that has the potential to cause significant harm to the marine environment, and we in Aotearoa, New Zealand, is actively engaged in negotiations to ensure that deep sea mining cannot proceed without robust environmental protections in place. But we also recognise that this has the potential to divide our region, and we want to find ways forward of staying united. In our region, climate change and resulting sea level rise is an urgent crisis, and so we are united in our the Pacific Islands Forum Leaders Declaration on preserving maritime zones in the face of climate change related sea level rise in August. That declaration made by PIF leaders. That declaration sets out our region's collective position on how UNCLOS applies in the situation of climate change related sea level rise. It promotes the principle of legal stability and certainty over maritime zones. I've asked before and I'll ask again, if there are any states that have any issues with the legal technicalities of what the Pacific are asking for, don't oppose it, but work with us in finding a way forward. And so we need to make sure that in 2023 and beyond, all of us, in particular those who rely on the ocean, can look back and say that 2022 was a super year for all. On the second part of your question, Heidi, I'd say I underscore that from a perspective of Aotearoa New Zealand, the ocean, the seas, that is so vital to our survival, vital to our cultural, spiritual, economic, and social well-being. And so SDG 14 provides the framework, an important framework for understanding the connection between ocean health and sustainable development objectives. I mean, we all know that the health of the ocean is threatened by many complex, interrelated challenges that are transboundary in nature. So, and that, you know, the oil spills, the discarded purse seine nets from IUU fishing, all of that harms our region. And we know that the only way forward is global action is the only solution. Now, the pandemic has disrupted our efforts in the way that we would normally do things. That's why this conference and us coming together and future meetings in 2022 helps us to galvanize our efforts. Even this becomes more important for us to come together. The upcoming United Nations Ocean Conference will be an important opportunity to take stock and reflect collectively on ways that we can strengthen global ocean action. Also with SDG 14, the calls for the enhancement of the conservation and sustainable use of the ocean through the implementation of the UN Convention on the Law of the Seas, as I've said before. 2022 marks the 40th anniversary of UNCLOS, and it is timely for the international community to celebrate its importance. Achieving SDG 14 target relies on sound ocean governance and science-informed decision-making. In the Pacific, the Office of the Pacific Ocean Commissioner and the Pacific Community Center for Ocean Science have important roles to play in this respect, and Aotearoa New Zealand is pleased to provide support to them. In this regard, Heidi and Your Excellency and ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to make the following announcement. In partnership, see, SDG 14 recognizes the essential role the ocean in food provides in food security and economies. And Aotearoa New Zealand is actively working towards more effective and sustainable fisheries management at multilateral, regional, and bilateral levels. Our support to regional organizations such as the Pacific Islands Forum Fisheries Agency and the Pacific Community, SPC, that Dr. Stewart represents, building monitoring, control, and surveillance capacity, improving labor standards on fishing vessels, increasing economic benefits from fisheries, and strengthening coastal fisheries management for food security. I heard this morning that the biggest risk to Pacific from IUU fishing is no longer dark vessels, but licensed vessels in our region. So in this vein, I'd like to make the following announcement. In partnership with the Pacific Island Forum Fisheries Agency, who is represented at this conference by Director General Tupou Rusin, Aotearoa New Zealand is announcing its commitment of $3.4 million to support the third phase of the Forum Fisheries Agency work, increasing employment and economic benefits from the Pacific tuna fisheries. This project Thank you. This project will firstly ensure Pacific Island countries can access key markets to sell their tuna, such as the European Union, by helping them meet access requirements. Secondly, to develop local fisheries businesses by providing technical advice and building government capacity to attract and evaluate investment proposals. And thirdly, implement a program of management and leadership training for women in the private sector. The Forum Fisheries Agency is an indispensable part of the Pacific, building regional solidarity and supporting economic resilience. And Aotearoa New Zealand is pleased to continue supporting their work in this area. I finish off, Heidi, with just, I know there are so many of you who are new to the Pacific region. I just want to acknowledge and thank you for taking the time to come all the way here. Now you know how it feels for us to try to come to your part of the world. But the fact that you're still here in this final session shows the strong commitment that you have for this cause. And I just ask you, stay the course. In the Pacific, we have this saying, if you see somebody drowning, don't ask them, what do they need? Don't ask them what kind of design of the boat they need. Just throw the life vessel out there and pull them in, and then discuss those things later. Anyway, we have a word in Aotearoa that says, be strong, and that's kia kaha. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Honourable Minister, and thank you for letting us know about this very important announcement and partnership of $3.4 million on the fisheries. Very interesting, and we've taken note on what you have said on the importance of having an all-government approach when we are looking at these things, and your ambition when it comes to the conclusion of BBNG, your commitment to UNCLOS, trying to find the balance between the science-informed decision-making, economic and environmental issues when you discuss issues such as deep-sea mining and so on. So thank you very much for those, and also your words to our audience. I agree. It's really great to see the final panel to have a full seating audience. Now it's my great pleasure to turn to Ambassador Michelle Bocoz. At the One Ocean Summit in Brest, 3 major commitments relating to the ocean and its sustainability were discussed. Number 1 was protecting biodiversity and the resources of our oceans. Number 2, joining forces with the ocean in the face of climate change. And number 3, putting an end to plastic pollution in the ocean. So since the summit, what has France been doing to implement the commitments? And also, if I may, France and Palau have been organizing these important oceans-related meetings. What will be the next steps to ensure that the ocean will remain at the heart of the international political agenda?
Thank you very much, Heidi, Ali, everybody. And first of all, let me congratulate Palau for the organization of this conference. We're very happy to hand over the baton from Brest to Palau and to continue again during this year. Faced with the urgency of the situation, France wishes to act as quickly as possible and set up a series of initiatives within the framework of the major commitments. As you were saying, Minister, we have to act locally, but we have to have the global framework as well, and that's what we're going to focus upon. First of all, we are committed to the protection of biodiversity and ocean resources, and we are announcing that we have already reached and exceeded the objective of classifying 30% of the land and sea areas under French jurisdiction as protected area, especially in the French Southern and Antarctic Territory National Nature Reserve, which is 1.5 million square kilometers protected. And in that regard, I would also commend the work being done by the French territories in this Pacific Ocean, New Caledonia, Wallis and Futuna, and French Polynesia, who are also working very hard in protecting biodiversity. President Emmanuel Macron also expressed his desire to raise the issue of overfishing and illegal fishing before the World Trade Organization. We would like to reach an agreement that will remove the subsidies that contribute to these activities, which, as you know, have such devastating impact on the sustainable management of the fish stocks. In its global fight against climate change, France, together with Colombia, launched in Brest an international coalition for blue carbon, which will bring together national and multilateral actors in this field to contribute to the financing of restoration of coastal ecosystems. In the summer, France and the Mediterranean countries will also ask the International Maritime Organization to classify the Mediterranean Sea as a low sulfur emission zone in order to reduce atmospheric pollution, and will also propose the creation of particularly vulnerable sea area with regard to the strong presence of cetaceans in order to limit the speed of navigation and thus reduce collisions. So this is a very important commitment for us. We're also committing to reducing plastic pollution in the oceans. First of all, we are doubling the funding to fight against plastic pollution. And then we decided to act locally by cleaning up 3 of the most critical coastal dumps we have on the French coast this year. Rising sea levels are a real risk for those dumps, and we really want to solve it immediately. The Brest Summit was also an opportunity for bilateral initiatives, and we launched one with India on the elimination of single-use plastic pollution, which we reinforced with national commitments. To confirm this moment and to build an ambitious international ocean agenda, France and Costa Rica have also proposed to jointly organize the next UN Ocean Conference in 2024. Another important commitment I would like to mention is the 4th Intergovernmental Conference to produce an agreement on a conservation and sustainable use of marine biodiversity of areas beyond national jurisdictions. The meeting was held in New York, and there were some progress. We had 27 members of the European Union and 20 non-EU countries that are committing to the High Ambition Coalition for Biodiversity Beyond National Jurisdiction. This is an important step, but now we need to have a substantive outcome and finalize this negotiation in the 5th conference. This is a very urgent matter, and the time is now. But the international community has become aware now that the ocean place on the political agenda today is not as commensurate as the role it has in the climatic and environmental and social balances in the planet, nor the threat to marine life. So what we need to do really is to deliver a global solution to be able to act at global level. We need to take this holistic approach. We need to have an integrated and a global governance for environmental and ocean issues in particular. I would really like to thank and commend the remarkable work of Palau here in the discussion, as they've been really instrumental in putting the center of the conference this intrinsic link between ocean, climate, biodiversity, as well as the urgency of the societies to provide a rapid and effective multilateral response to the crisis. I would like to quote President Whipps. He said, "We need a global response, bold actions, accessible financing, equitable partnership to enable the communities to build resilience." Soon we will have the opportunity to meet again at the United Nations Conference on the Oceans in Lisbon, a marker of the Portuguese and European commitments, where we intend to gather for an update on the Brest commitments and where we've moved there. This will pave the way for further steps, including the COP27 in Egypt in November. As you can see, it is no longer the time for discussion, it's time for action. In the coming months, we will have a number of international commitments in those conferences. We need to move in protection and sustainable use of ocean resources. A super year for leadership, yes, but we must act, and the time is now. So thank you all for being here, and thank you all for your commitment.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. It's great to hear of France's commitment, so many, and you have mentioned some of the priorities that you have on fighting overfishing and illegal fishing, reducing plastic pollution, and also the commitment for the 2024 UN Ocean Conference. It's great to hear. Also, you mentioned that you will be doubling the funding for reducing plastic pollution. That's excellent. So thank you very much. Now it's my great pleasure to ask Ambassador Hunt What are the priorities for your country, Antigua and Barbuda, and also, importantly, the Alliance of Small Island States, which you are chairing, in terms of the ocean action in 2022 and beyond? And also, what kind of partnerships will be most efficient as Antigua and Barbuda and indeed SIDS tackle the significant ocean-related challenges?
Thank you, and Ali. Of course, Heidi, I note your introduction of Finland, but having just returned from Finland, you did omit one thing. I was in Finland last week, and it was named second happiest country in the world for the second time in a row. So you did not tell the audience that. But having said that, in terms of our priorities for Antigua and Barbuda and for AOSIS, of course, I can go on and speak on a lot on and on this, but of course, we've heard over the past 2 days, it's clear, the clear takeaway in my view, that we have a strong momentum for building on the consensus to center ocean at the heart of our discussion in terms of when we speak of raising ambition, ocean has to be up there now with climate. Of course, when we speak, we always speak about climate change, and now is the time to raise oceans to that level. So in terms of a super year, first, and you've touched on it, on the ambassadors touching it, everyone, if we want to call it a super year and priorities for us, first, we had the French ocean meeting, so we can all say good things about that. But now we've just had even a bigger move where we had an environment assembly where we launched a process to tackle plastic pollution, and this is a great achievement for us. Certainly, it is a way that we can now look at the whole issue of marine plastic in terms of its global way in treating it, the rules for plastic production, rules for plastic use, and plastic disposal. So we're looking at a complete way of dealing with the whole issue of plastic. So this is a big plus for a super year. Also, you also mentioned the whole issue of the second UN conference, but before that comes up, the ambassador in France just mentioned the 5th BBNJ or High Seas Treaty. Mm-hmm. I would not refer to it as that way. I would say hopefully the last and final BBNJ meeting where we can come to an agreement and decide on a way forward on dealing with the sustainable use of marine biodiversity. So I'm hoping this is the final and not the 5th, when then you come back with a 6th. So that's our, in terms of AOSIS. Of course, this would lend a lot for us because we'll be able to go forward in addressing the whole issue of Article 14 of UNCLOS and recognize the special circumstances of SIDS, which is clearly articulated in that. And in terms of another issue which would help us as promoting a special year for oceans will be the whole issue of the UN conference, which we are all priming up for. Of course, all the major stakeholders will be at the table when we convene on SDG 14, life below water and its goals and its targets. So I think the second UN conference is a big play for us in terms of priority. We will then be able to take stock, member states, regarding the nature, the targets, discuss new emerging areas like shipping, which many of you have addressed here today, sea level rise, and ocean science. These are some of the issues we hope to address. We certainly look forward to a strong, targeted political discussion and outcome on this conference. Of course, this is something that we all hope for, but we can't do it alone. And many of you have said the priority for us is oceans, but we have to protect the ocean and fight to get to at least 30% by 2030. Mm-hmm. And for once, I must say, Heidi, the ocean is now dependent on us. We are not dependent on the ocean. So if we really want to do good, I think we are the ones who should be trying to help the ocean and not the ocean helping us. And regarding your second question, what kind of partnership? This may be a troublesome one, but I will try to address that as best as possible. As as large ocean states, we recognize that ocean is central to our lives. It's our economic development, our cultural identity, and we would want to seek good partnership with a vision, our vision of a sustainable ocean agenda. And we're hoping this could be addressed. And I would like just to give you some ideas to some of the partnerships, how we see partnership. We need a clean ocean where sources of pollution are identified and removed. So if we're going to ask for partners, they must have that vision like we do. A healthy and resilient ocean where marine ecosystems are mapped and protected. We need a safe ocean where people are protected from ocean hazard. We also need a sustainable harvest ocean, ensuring the provision of food and supply. Finally, we would like to see a transparent ocean which is open to access for data and information and technology. All of these are cross-cutting, and I say this because in the Eastern Caribbean, where I'm from, Antigua and Barbuda, of course, we have developed what's called the Oecs Commission, where we have a project which deals with the sustainable fisheries. It has tourism built in and waste management, all cross-cutting. And this is a partnership we have built on our vision where we address the whole, not just oceans and fisheries, but we also integrate tourism and waste management because it's all encompassing. So from Antigua and Barbuda's standpoint, we look forward to stronger partnership and also as AOCs to accelerate and the development of a sustainable, equitable ocean economy and protect the world's ocean through tangible commitments in line with our vision. So these are our views as we go forward when we are looking for partnership. Thank you, Heidi.
Thank you very much. Really important points, and you have outlined the important upcoming events, many of them final BB&J. I think we all hope for that. And the leadership of AOCC is crucial, will be absolutely crucial in these important events, as you have mentioned, and on the partnerships, definitely we need partnerships, everybody, and solidarity across the globe. That's really important. Thank you very much. Now it's my great pleasure to ask Charlina Vicheva. We were very impressed by the yesterday to hear some of the major announcements that you made here in this hall that the European Commission has made for ocean action. So I'd like to hear from you. It would be interesting to hear a little bit more perhaps on that, and then what how the European Commission sees this, our Oceans Conference, and its role in related processes regarding oceans.
Thank you very much, Heidi, and good afternoon, everyone. Ali. I will start again with thanks for the great hospitality of Palau, extremely beautiful nature, very much linked to ocean. It was quite a time, and it costs really a lot of effort to sustain a process throughout the pandemic. But I have to say that you really showed resilience and real sustained efforts in order to manage this process going on. So thank you very, very much, both for the resilience and also for the great hospitality here in Palau. How do we see our Ocean Conference? We have been a host. We are committing a lot of effort and money. That means that we believe in the bright future of this process. And yesterday I announced that the overall amount is €1 billion, which is a bit more in dollars. I announced that it is translated in 44 individual commitments. But actually what is important behind all that is what we are going to achieve as an outcome, result, and concrete benefit for the healthy ocean and all the people that depend on oceans. I would say that our basic commitment in this process will be to continue to make it a success story, because it's an obvious success story every time we meet in this format. What is good about this process is that it really focuses attention on the ocean, which we heard on many occasions throughout the panels, that ocean tends to be a bit less in the focus than the terrestrial areas, probably because we tend to see the surface of the sea and not we have below the surface. It is not the case for the Pacific nations, because you know very well what the ocean means. But for the general public, it is really important to have this focus on oceans, and our ocean conference does it. On top, it really triggers, it stimulates so many initiatives. And you know what I like the most about this process? The positive nature, the positive spirit, because it's voluntary. Because anyone that have been in, for example, COP26 in Glasgow or before, everybody knows how tedious, how much tension there is in the negotiation process. Here it's positive, and it's also pushy for the other formats. See what commitments we have. It will be shameful for COP27 not to keep pace with what we are doing here. So for all these reasons, we really believe that this process is important, and it's very concrete, because it is circled around an action. This particular conference, it is extremely important for at least two reasons, on top of everything else. The first one is that it links, and many colleagues already mentioned, it links at the Brest conference, which was a great opportunity offered by the French presidency of the European Union to gather us all, and then the UN conference, which is hosted in Lisbon, but by two countries, Portugal and Kenya. So this type of link is extremely important, and it already makes these three events gathered together, it makes it already a super year for the oceans. Then the second reason, which is equally important, is that it focuses on the most ocean-dependent and climate change prone region in the world. I liked what the Minister of New Zealand said. We need, really saving of everybody that lives so much dependent on oceans. So that's why this conference in Palau, being a success, is also important to make the sensitivity towards this region much higher. So the effort was great, really enormous for a small country like Palau, but it will pay off. I'm sure it will increase the sensitivity, and it will increase the attention exactly to this region. And talking about this region, I would like, because I talk billions, but I would like to say again what we are doing for the Pacific region. We are in investment of 120 million, and all of these are extremely nice projects. Projects that are for keeping the marine biodiversity, projects for sustainable use of marine resources, projects for eliminating the IUU, the illegal, unregulated, unreported fisheries. And probably to go a bit wider in the context, I have to say that the European Union and its member states, and we heard from Michel from France's perspective, we are extremely serious in taking the responsibility towards healthy oceans, to ensure stability, to protect and sustainably use the ocean and its resources and its biodiversity. And I would like to make a remark about a general process that we have started already in 2016, because it was for the first time that the European Union initiated, launched International Ocean Governance Agenda. And now, 6 years later, we are in a review process because we have upscaled our commitment, because we want to upgrade the agenda up to the vision of having a carbon neutral continent of Europe by 2050. And in this review, I'm very proud to say that probably many of you participated, because it was extremely inclusive. We have made a forum of international ocean governance last year, and you're going to see the new edition right before the Lisbon conference. So the progress is there, but as many of you said, the ocean still needs a lot of effort. It has to remain very high on the political agenda in all the various fora. And our ambitious goals and targets, they really need a sustained effort, joint effort. And in order to really point out to the negative side, because I was a bit too optimistic probably, let's remember that the challenges ahead are quite many. Let's remember that the targets for 2020 under the Sustainable Development Agenda, and specifically SDG 14, they have not been reached. Neither the target on eliminating harmful subsidies, it was said today. I hope that this year we're going to conclude the process in the World Trade Organization. Neither the 10%, mere 10%, of coastal and marine areas protection, nor regulating the harvesting and sustainable fisheries. So we have so much to do still. And in order to reach all these past commitments and the future more ambitious targets, we need concerted effort and this type of conferences. Let me say something more about the role of the EU, because we are extremely, I take one more minute. And I would like to say that our ambition to oceans is translated in all our policies, because leadership, and we are ambitious to really play a leadership role, it starts from home. We translate it in our common fisheries policy, and let me tell you that for many years, though you might think differently, the common fisheries policy is centered around maximum sustainable yield, which really is a sustainability concept. The maritime policy, I mentioned yesterday, new approach to sustainable blue economy, both to green the old sectors, but also to identify smart solutions with the emerging new sectors of blue economy. Our environmental policy, we have a biodiversity strategy that already commits us to 30 by 30. I hope that will be achieved at the international level. We have zero pollution action plan. We have climate policy with updated adaptation strategy. And we have an extremely rich data collection, research, and science program. My colleague mentioned the Mission Ocean that will engage 50 million only seed research capital to mobilize much more. Because let's remember, linear solutions will not help us. We need leapfrog, and that can be ensured by research, innovation, and smart approaches. Everybody knows about Copernicus, and many of you are served by the Emergency Copernicus Center. So last but not least, let's really work together. Let's make our effort a real action through also the Our Ocean Conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very important points, and of course we take note of the 1 billion euros, 48 portfolios. That's very impressive and important. And European Commission, European Union is such an important partner and supporter of many of the projects, but also importantly can be a very important ally in many of these political processes that are ongoing that will be crucial for our oceans. So thank you very much. Now it's my great pleasure to discuss with Dr. Stuart Minchin. Really, you are a representative of this region. What are the main priorities for your organization during this super year for the ocean, and how can they help Pacific Island countries and territories tackle the challenges that you are facing?
Great. Well, thanks, Heidi, and I'll try and make this short, if possible. I realise we're up against time. SPC, the Pacific Community, is the largest and oldest regional institution in the Pacific. We provide the scientific and technical expertise for the region on behalf of our member countries, and we cover all 22 Pacific Island countries and territories, so we're really here on their behalf. We exist to serve them. So our priorities for this year are set by our member countries, the challenges that they're facing. And they are custodians of the largest ocean on the planet. They produce, as we've heard through the conference, 50% of the world's global tuna supply. We underpin billions of dollars in blue economy revenue from tourism. We're the largest transshipment highway for trade in the world, and our members cover 30% of the world's exclusive economic zones. Right? So as custodians of our ocean space, the Pacific is critical, not just to the Pacific, but to the world, and the services that are provided are important to the global environment and the global economy. So I'd urge you all to think about support for our members in the Pacific is not just to think about it as aid, but as investments into stewardship of the world's largest ocean space. And it's our Pacific people, the ocean is at the heart of their food systems, their livelihoods, their culture, their ingenuity and resilience, and we are there to support them with that. I'll mention two big challenges. Obviously, as we come out of COVID this year, and the recovery from COVID is critical for our members, they're looking to economic diversification. How can they, they've been very dependent on tourism and fishing in the region for income. What are the other income sources that can be provided through diversification of the blue economy? And how can we support them in those challenges? The big existential threat in the region, of course, is climate change, and it is so critical that we act now, and this year is going to be critical for the future of the region and the outcomes that we face. We're facing higher temperatures, acidification, changing ocean conditions that are driving, as our fisheries scientists have estimated, future tuna stocks out of our exclusive economic zones in some cases and into unregulated international waters, which will have impacts both on the economies of our members and on the sustainability of those tuna stocks in future. Higher sea levels have already been mentioned, and this year will be crucial for us to bring attention to this. It's really important to recognise that it's very difficult to manage something that we don't measure. We need improved science and information products to make good decisions on sustainable development opportunities in our region. This needs to combine traditional knowledge, modern science, and operational observation systems, and those do not exist effectively in this region at this point in time. The UN Decade on Ocean Science is a great opportunity for the global community to help us to develop those operational observation systems. We need to develop those to provide evidence-based policies and systems for a sustainable ocean governance. And we need to draw on the advancements in technology that have occurred for maximum coverage of those observations in our region. We're building momentum to set up an operationalised program called Digital Earth Pacific in our region, which will transform the imagery that is provided, for example, from Europe in Copernicus and the US through Landsat into actionable, decision-ready tools for all stakeholders to use across our entire region, ubiquitously across our land and ocean, updated every time a satellite flies over. So with these kind of tools, we can start to actually manage our ocean space in an effective way without relying on only in situ measurements that are very expensive and very difficult to manage with small populations and small resources. So I'll finish just to say, ultimately, every effort needs to be made to ensure that sustainable and equitable benefits accrue from managing our Pacific Ocean space, and that multiple uses can and will exist in the Blue Pacific continent, and we're here to help our members in doing the sustainable, the science and technology advice to ensure that that sustainable outcome leads to a bright future for the Pacific. So thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you also for keeping it short, but thank you mostly for the important work that you are doing in this region. And many of the things that I heard that you were talking about, combining traditional knowledge and indigenous scientific evidence and indigenous knowledge, that was also something that the Minister of New Zealand was talking about, as well as sustainable and equitable benefits of the oceans. I think that was very important points that you have made. So, ladies and gentlemen, I don't think we have time for more questions, but I would like to thank really warmly all the panelists. Yes.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to, because I really thought that I need 2 sentences. I really want to invite everyone that has not seen the High Ambition Coalition for BBNJ, which now gathers 48 countries around. I totally agree that in order to make it a super year, we need the agreement in August. So please see this high-level coalition, and if you feel that you are truly committed to reaching an agreement, join us. And the second announcement, the European Union proposed 2 marine protected areas in the Antarctic. We have to make a cloud and try and get it there. We have resistance from 2 member states of CAMLAR, but let's really push for the establishment of these MPAs. You know the Arctic. I've seen both the Arctic and Antarctic, the most important areas for climate. Thank you.
Thank you for those important appeals. And again, really my heartfelt thanks to all of you panelists. You have been excellent. Thank you for your presentations, and thank you for the important work that you are doing. We need all of you, everyone, to really work hard to make this a year. So please join me of giving applause to the panelists. Okay. I would like to end by going back to Special Envoy John Kerry and paraphrasing something he also said yesterday, because that resonated with me very strongly. He had mentioned that the path of least resistance often leads to the path of greatest destruction. So I challenge you all to actively participate in this super year of action and make the difficult choices that are needed to get our job done. Thank you very much.